Why am I here?
Very, 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 very long time ago.
I will talk. So people like food.
And needed an escape at least one night a week. And she loves seeing new Toastmasters bloom. We will get to see this on YouTube in the near future.
Like this video to tell the presenters what you thought? Hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss anything else. And comment below if there's anything else you'd like to see.
Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Welcome to Shoot for the Moon Plan B. Today we have Joanne Morrison leading with club decisions and building new skills. The topic today is business meetings that our presenter Joanne Morrison joined Toastmasters a very, 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 very long time ago. She won't tell us exactly how long, but she joined because she worked and had 3 children and needed an escape at least one night a week. And she liked learning and obviously has continued to like working as she has been with Toastmasters for oh so long. And she loves seeing new Toastmasters bloom. Learning to communicate and learning to lead is a lifelong pursuit. So please welcome our leader today, Distinguished Toastmaster Joanne Morrison.
I will talk. I will talk, and yes, if you get sick of me, raise your hand. So I do have a bit of an agenda, so I'll just run down what it is. And I'm going to talk about why we have meetings, a little bit about my love for Robert's Rules and why I'm changing my mind a little bit slowly, how clubs can make decisions and include all of their members and why they have to. Some things about how many types of meetings there are and who should attend a meeting that you're having, and not just a Toastmaster meeting, but some of the other meetings. There's also a worksheet that we can send you for planning meetings and some more information about running meetings. That's not too exciting so far, so hopefully we get more interesting as we go along. So I imagine that many of you have been to meetings that get boring, or you wonder, why am I there even? Like, nobody seems to want to hear what I have to say. So why am I here? What we want to do in Toastmasters, if we're in a club meeting and we're having business, is we want to include people and allow everybody an opportunity to have their say if they have something to contribute to a discussion or a motion that we're having. That requires a little bit of skill, and we'll talk a bit more about skill and how to include people. Because we're all different, we all need different things to help us participate. But why do we even have meetings? And how many people have meetings at work and they just find they're at too many meetings? Many businesses have so many meetings, people actually spend more time in meetings than not in meetings. And so for some people that is their work, but preparing for meetings can take quite a while. If you think about an in-person conference, if you ever have had the privilege of attending one of those, we're not sure what they are anymore, but if you've ever attended one, it takes months to plan a meeting. And a lot of planning can go into meetings. And there is also a planning sheet that you can download, and it just has a sample of the kinds of things you might want to include when you're planning a meeting. If you put a lot of time up front into planning a meeting, then you're really prepared, and you might just want to focus who you invite to the meeting. Now, very often when we have our club executive meetings, everybody is there. But think about if you want to have a meeting just for planning how to get members, who would be there? It would be the VP membership, possibly the treasurer, for sure the president. It might just be the 3 of you, or if there's someone else in the club who's very good at bringing members, maybe they should be invited along, even though they're not in the executive. And that way you're going to get more interesting information as well, and you're including other people, which is one good way of getting them on the executive later. So you can think about that a little bit. Officially, Toastmasters International says our businesses are run by Robert's Rules of Order, Parliamentary Procedure. But then they put out a lovely booklet called How to Conduct Productive Meetings. And it was actually a workshop. But now I find that this wonderful booklet is no more. So that makes me a little bit sad. But some of the information I'll share today is from that. First of all, when you're planning a meeting, you want to think, what's the purpose? So when I talked about it's the purpose for just a few people to get together to talk about getting more members and how are we going to do that. Maybe you want to have reports at your regular Toastmaster meeting and have all the executive members give a 1 or 2 minute what they've been doing and how we're coming along. Maybe the treasurer would say how our money is doing. And so that each one is included in that business meeting, we need to make those very quick. We don't want long speeches on what you're doing. If there's a problem to be dealt with, like how are we going to help new members feel one of us, then that's a different kind of meeting, and that should be a focus of that meeting and not include reports from all the officers, maybe reports from what we're doing right now. So there's many ways of thinking about meetings, and if you break it down and don't have people there who are not interested in the topic, you're going to have a more focused meeting. That said, when you do have executive meetings, your job as executive members is to bring motions or bring ideas back to the members in the club. Toastmasters International tells us it's not our money. It's not just our learning, it's everybody's learning. So, and everybody's time. So why should the executive decide things? Well, some members will say, well, you guys just go ahead and decide. I don't even care about that. But if you don't include members, they don't have the same buy-in to the club. They're not part of the running of the club. They're not valued in the same way as when they're included. So yes, executive members may have a good idea of what could be done in a Toastmaster meeting. They're usually longer time Toastmasters or people who are more invested in leading. But you do want to bring ideas to the members because it's the members' time, money, learning. So you bring your ideas. So say you bring an idea for purchasing things from Toastmasters International, and because you and the other executive members love leading, all of the things you're considering purchasing are things about leading. And where does that leave those excited members who love speaking? So maybe they would make suggestions to add some things towards the idea of better speaking, maybe international contests to share with club members. So we want to consider all members' needs too. And if we're on our own trajectory, we might just miss that. For instance, another example that happened in one of the clubs I belonged to, it was an advanced club, and we decided as a club not to participate in contests. Well, mainly because there was only one member who could. The rest of us were area and division governors, and we were not allowed to participate in contests. So we would go and help organize or serve in the contest, but we didn't participate in the contest. And then 2 or 3 years later, a member said, well, I'm going to vote against that this year because, and we looked around the room and went, oh yeah, now pretty much everybody can participate in contests. So in this year, we changed that. So you have to be a little flexible about what you're doing. And in time, you know, clubs change and they grow, and the membership changes and different people on the executive. Maybe you have some longtime members who say that didn't work for us. But if you bring something to all of the members and they agree to doing it, then that's what you'll do. So if the members are participating in decisions, you will get better decisions. And studies show that more people involved in decisions get better decisions. Except for maybe that one really, really smart person in your club who just knows everything. But you could let them participate too, of course. So if our official way is Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm super passionate about Robert's Rules of Order because if you have a meeting problem, the solution is in Roberts. They have thought all of this out for so many years that indeed all of the solutions for difficult parts of meetings, there is a solution there. But more business meetings nowadays are consensus. So if you're at work and you're doing meetings, you're not going to use Robert's Rules, and very few people know it. And the problem with Robert's Rules is you could get someone who knows quite a bit, but maybe a little bit off track in what they believe is true. So then that person can hold you hostage to Robert's Rules when they might be a little bit off track. And if you don't know to go and research that, then you'll be stopped doing what you wanted to do or having to do it a certain way that somehow feels awkward or not quite right. So when you come to consensus, then you're including all of the members in a decision, and you're going to get different points of view. And that brand new member may have a good idea. I've had some of my best speech evaluations from brand new members who aren't afraid to say, Joanne, that was dumb, because no one is perfect and no one does things right all the time. And we all have things to learn. So when this brand new member said to me, when you went over time, the story was too long. And that had never been brought into that space for my head. Now I saw pieces of my speech, not a whole speech. So new members, longtime members, we all need to have a voice. And I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk about that. There are basically three kinds of meetings. So there's meetings where you're given information and basically you could ask questions, but the information is all one way, it's out. So maybe there's information that's come from Toastmasters International, or maybe you're in business and the owner of the company is having some changes and they're there to tell you how it's going to work so that you know what's going on. And then the second way is information coming to the people running the meeting or the people from various sources. So you may have several people giving reports or giving their ideas and they know ahead. And so mostly the information is going to people to synthesize and reconstruct and bring back as motions with more information. And then the third way is where it's back and forth. So you have an idea and everybody participates, or there's information and there's ideas, and you put it all together and make decisions. So those are the three overarching business ways of running business meetings or making decisions. Now the nitty-gritty. If you want to run a business meeting and you need to do planning, and you should do planning before your executive meetings. And recently I was elected president, and I've sent some emails to some of the executive members, and I've said, what about this idea or this idea? And can you tell me what your ideas about that? So before we even get to the meeting, they're prepared. And the best business meeting person I ever had would phone me every month before our meeting and ask me how I was doing and what was going to happen and what were my plans. And so if I was a little bit behind in something, it would refocus me and it would help me. So I think that's really a lot of the president's job, is to help members of the executive to focus on what they're doing and how are they going to be successful. And a good president will ask questions. When you're leading, I remember when I was a division governor, it was because I'm old, I wasn't a director. When I was a division governor, I had 7 area governors. that was more how it was back in the day. One guy, very, very smart, great ideas, but he didn't get moving very quickly, and he needed someone to light a fire under him. One woman was very, very smart and had lots of ideas, but not a lot of confidence. So getting her to move forward was asking her questions. She came up with the brilliant ideas, which blew me away. And I'm thinking, thank gosh you had the idea, because I had no clue what to do in this case. And so we have to rely on each other and trust that everybody has good ideas and can participate. And there's lots of different types of people. One of the fellas, I couldn't figure out why he wasn't visiting his club. It turned out he'd been out of work and his wife was not too keen on him doing too many Toastmaster things. I offered to babysit for his kids. That's what he needed from me as his leader. So you do what you can to help people be successful. As soon as I suggested that, he decided he'd talk to his wife and work it out. But just knowing there was a door open for him was helpful. And that's what leaders do. We stand up, we act like a leader, we look like a leader, we're not afraid to be wrong, and we're not afraid to not know everything, but we're there to facilitate and help our clubs grow. And the same if we're in business, we're there to help people do their jobs well. One of my Toastmaster friends worked in the banking industry, and they had a meeting every morning. And to me, all of those 5 morning meetings sounded like one continuous meeting. The first morning was music playing and people just catching up after their weekend and getting to know each other. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday all had their patterns as well. So it was kind of like one meeting, but over 5 days. So there can be real flexibility in how you build and manage meetings and manage people. You don't always need to have everybody attending. We've got 3 types of meeting, and there is a worksheet for planning. Also, meetings basically require 5 steps. So breaking any type of meeting down, whether it's information in, information out, or both ways, the first thing is a plan. Who's going to speak? Who's in charge? Who's bringing things? What do you need? And opening the meeting, you want to start out with a meeting on what do we do at Toastmasters? People come in and their heads may be still at work or back home with their kids, or they had a little run-in with somebody while driving, somebody honked at them and cut them off, and their head is somewhere else. So what we do is we start with an inspiration, because this is how we bring our minds together. So you can start with a little humor, you can start with some information, but make it fun. Make it something that people want to listen to, just to break where they're at and bring them to the meeting, and to set the tone. When we set the tone for a meeting, people are happy to be there. You can set the tone for an executive meetings with muffins, you see? So people like food. And if you're meeting in person, you can do that. One day that'll happen. We're not sure when right now. Then you handle the meeting and you have your agenda and you follow it along. The meeting happens and you know what things will be handled again at the next meeting. That's all decided. You conclude the meeting and you basically say a little bit about what happened. If it's a consensus meeting and a decision's not finished, you want to review that meeting. You want to review where you're at. So far we have 3 ideas of what we could do, and these 3 people are going to research those and bring back the information. Now everybody knows what's gone on, and anybody who's blanked out for a couple minutes knows, and they can participate in the next meeting. And finally, you do what we always do at Toastmasters, you evaluate. And you can do that in any business meeting. So how is everybody feeling about the meeting? Did we accomplish what we started out to do? And then as a leader of the meeting, you want to evaluate how you feel it went. And depending on the importance of the meeting, send out an evaluation sheet and ask for feedback. So those are the 5 steps. You plan, you open, you handle the meeting, you conclude and evaluate, and it makes it seem like the handling is not nearly as much as all the rest. How do you get to be a leader? How do you stand up and be the leader? I was a district governor, and I walked into the business meeting in the spring where we have our elections, and the lights were off. There was no PowerPoint, there was no overhead projector, there was nothing ready. What to do? A leader steps up. I had my copies, and I gave somebody a copy and said, print off 100 of these. We're going to have 150, 200 in the room, but that'll be enough we can share and people can see what's going on in the agenda. Because I led, because it was okay and people were still looked after and comfortable, they knew what was going on. And I happen to like humor a lot. People walked out of the meeting going, I didn't know business meetings could be that much fun. So leaders don't give up, they lead. Whatever's happening, it's up to you if you're leading to make it work. Leaders stand up and they look like a leader and they act like a leader, but they don't need to be perfect. I guess the other thing is how to get to consensus. How do you get people to join in? Sometimes there's a member who has a lot of ideas and they can be a little off track, or they bring up something that doesn't belong. So you're going to have to help them know that what they're saying right now doesn't fit with what you're doing. They had an idea, something reminded them of something else, and there they were. So you could say, right now, we're talking about this. You bring them back to what's going on and say, that's a topic for another day, or could you send me something about that? Or could you talk to me later about that? That's something I would like to deal with at some point, but today's topic is this. And that'll help the person to be part of the meeting and not take everybody offside from where they're at. Getting to consensus, you want to have everybody speak as much as possible. What if there's that super smart, quiet person? How will you engage them? How will you help that person who is, speaks on too long? Maybe you have everybody timed, and maybe that person who's quiet, you say, Franz, could you please tell me what you think about this? So include people. The more you include people, the more valued they feel. And we want people to feel valued and included for sure. Some things for planning the meeting. You know what type of meeting it is of the 3 kinds. You've selected the participants. Maybe you have things to plan if it's a bigger group, a Toastmaster meeting where you've moved to another meeting. Is it a large information giving and everybody's to be included, or problem solving? If it's problem solving, in a circle would be better where you're face to face and you can see each other. If it's information giving, you can have chairs in rows and that works fine. If it's a big room with a lot of people and you're sharing information, you want to angle those chairs a bit so you can see each other. Before the meeting, you're going to tell people what you're going to decide on. This is what we're working on. The meeting date, time, and place, the purpose and the outcome of the meeting. What is expected from them? Joe, I would really like you to bring a report on what you've been working on, and so that we can, all know what's happening so far and bring us all up to date. What will the meeting length be? Do you need a meal? All of those things are part of planning a meeting. So you really need to think it all through. So one thing that can exclude people if you use Robert's Rules of Order is you have people speak for and against a motion. And it's interesting to me that when you do understand how Roberts would work, it can actually be the same procedure as looking for a consensus in a smaller group. The most wonderful example I heard of that was a couple years ago. We were having our spring conference and going through realigning the clubs, putting clubs in groups so that there's 4 or 5 clubs in each area. And one man was particularly against doing it the way it was stated in the motion. And he felt that way really strongly. But he got to speak, and he got to speak for probably 5 minutes, even though our time was 2. And several other people in between when he started, or before he started to speak and later spoke against the motion, and they had valid reasons. Sometimes when, especially there's one person or a small group of people who are going in one direction and most of the others are going in others, that small group or one person feels run over. And we don't want them to feel like that. We want them to feel valued and included. So how do you do that? This business meeting was so beautiful, and this person was so well heard and respected by all the people that he went out of the room happy with the decision and didn't bring it up again. And all the other people were just off to lunch and everybody was fine. There was no concern about his well-being because it was obvious that he was listened to and his opinions were valued, but he could see that it wasn't going to work now that everybody else had had their say. So it was really, really great the way it was handled. And it can work that way in Roberts, but sometimes it doesn't. And looking for consensus is really what we want to do in small groups. And in fact, even in Roberts Rules of Order, when it's a small group, in a large group, the person running the meeting, the chairman, would not vote, would not make motions. But in a small group, you do, even under Roberts Rules of Order. Because if you think about the president of a club might know more about some things than other members because they might be more connected to the area or the district than other members. So it just seems logical that the president would be involved more in a more personal way. That said, once something gets to be contentious in any way, then going to a slightly more formal process where it's more step by step can really be helpful to diffuse anything that's blowing up a bit so that everybody again is participating. What you can do when you're looking for consensus is you can test to see where you're at. So you could say just a straw vote, hands up, how many people feel this way, how many feel that way. So you're not voting for a motion, you're just trying to see where people are at. And you say, well, and then as the chairman, you can say, Jennifer and Robert think this, and Marcy and Graham think that, and that's where we're at right now. So now we're clear where we're at. What can we do to keep going and help to get this decision made? Now, this sounds messy, and it sounds like it's time consuming, and that can be a problem. But when you go through that process as an executive and you're learning to work together and you honor each other's time and each other's suggestions, you've got a much stronger team. Anytime a team gets together, you're a new team. If you've got one new member, you're new. And that can be disruptive to the process you have. That's normal. It's not bad. It's just the way it is. So when we had Mr. Super Smart in a club, and he just knew everything, and people were really ticked off because he was a know-it-all. And 3 people came to me and said, "You've got to talk to that guy. He just thinks he knows everything." And I said, well, I kind of felt the same way. But actually, I've checked things and he does know everything. So what are we going to do? Just accept what he says, because he doesn't say things if he doesn't know it. And that just seemed to diffuse things. So, there's different ways of handling different problems, and you just have to keep your heart and your mind open so you can try to look at a way that might help the situations, and go with your gut. If you're just angry, maybe not the best time. Go home and think about that for a while or find somebody to talk to that you can work it out and come back fresh. Working for consensus isn't always easy. It is a messy process at some time, but when you have it set up well with a group of people who are your executive and you've gone through it already and you're pretty close to a decision, it can be really helpful for all members then to understand why you want to do something a certain way. And if they interject something new and it's sensible, there'll be an immediate buy-in. So I a very long time ago sat on a board, and we rattled around for about 3 months trying to make a decision for something, and we couldn't, and we couldn't, and we couldn't. What we were missing was legal advice. And we had a lawyer join the board, and as soon as he said why we were having trouble, it was solved. We all immediately went, yeah, of course. We just didn't have the information. So sometimes what we need is more information, or the right information, to make a better decision. And it's okay to postpone a decision as long as there's no fire till you get the right information. Let's go away and do some research and come back. When you're going through the process of building consensus, you can research again and again with the members there. How is it going? Work towards a solution that would also bring the opponents into the decision. So is there a partway decision we can make? Is there some accommodation we can make? Just being a little more creative and not being stuck on something a certain way can help other people feel included. And often they're better decisions too. So at work, and also, then it's more information. When I was district governor, there was a couple people, one from the island and one from the north, who would phone me almost monthly with long ideas of things to do. And for some people, they were difficult personalities. But they always did their research, and they really had their best heart forward when they wanted to help me and our district. Rarely were they off base. And they did some research, and I would send them off to do a little research and make sure. And by golly, they were on the right track. So people who can disturb a little bit, there's a reason. Something is making them uncomfortable, and they can help us. Now, if they're really off track, you have to learn to handle that too, so that they still feel included. Generally. Learning to listen to people is a whole skill in itself. And giving people feedback, telling them what you're hearing, telling them how you feel about something can be helpful. Telling them what you heard them say and what it means to you is important. We all have the opportunity to use our voices to help people understand where other people are at too, and why we're maybe opponents, and bring together. And when you think about it, that person who is brave enough to oppose something is valuable. They can help us. Where those people who are quiet and go away and seethe and don't say anything, or go and talk behind the meeting and stir things up, but don't don't have a contribution, they can cause more problems. We want that inclusion. It really helps us, and it helps us to help them and to figure it out. And sometimes we have to do that one-on-one. Sometimes people get stuck where they're at, and we have to do this one-on-one. Like that guy who knew everything. I don't know if there have been any questions about dealing with people or dealing with meetings, or if anybody was expecting something today that I have not covered. I'd like to hear from you. Can we be, I don't see any questions there, but it's because there is some handouts. There's a meeting planning workshop sheet, and there's a resource list too. The new version of Parliamentary Procedure is coming out this August. Not sure when it'll be ready in stores. And there's also a mini version called Robert's Rules of Order in Brief. It's very readable. There's really good examples. And that same information can be used in a consensus meeting. So Robert's Rules of Order was written by a preacher's son who was an engineer. He was in the army, and he was a major, but he was in the army to build engineering things. So bridges in Seattle, and a harbor in the southern states. So he was a really smart man who saw that meetings were going sideways, and he wasn't there to push people to make decisions. He just wanted better decisions. There you go. Thank you. Robert's Rules of Order in Brief, and there'll be a new version of that this year too after August, but helpful. Yeah. Has anybody had any particularly difficult things happen in business meetings, or something that you want to try doing that you want some direction on? You all know everything now. Yes? Yeah. There is more information for running meetings and who does what. We have a club leadership handbook. I hope you all know about that, and check that out. You can see what your other executive members are supposed to be doing, and you can see what you're supposed to be doing, which is always a good thing. We go to training, but not everything can be covered there. And also there's the club success plan, which we work together to figure out what we're going to do at the beginning of the year. If you do those things, it's like when you're in a plane. When I'm sitting on a plane and it's going to take off the ground, you ever watched a goose take off from the ground, from the water? They look the most awkward thing, and they're working so hard to get up in the air. And that's what we need to do at the beginning of our year as Toastmasters. We work hard at the beginning of the year. A lot of energy goes into the preparation and the planning, and that's how we get to be successful. And we revisit that plan periodically so we know where we're at, and maybe we can adjust it and make better decisions and help our club.
Joanne?
Yes, hi.
I have a question from the chat box.
Okay.
Okay, from Mara Lee.
Hi, Mara Lee.
She would like to know how often and how long is recommended to have a club executive meeting, how frequency, I guess.
That's a good question. Thank you, Marilee. How often should you have meetings? Well, quarterly is fine, but how much can you do? I would suggest once a month, and partly for the connection. You know, whether you're on Zoom or whether you can meet in person, the stronger a team you can build in your 7 executive members, the stronger your club will be. The executive is the hub. And when you know and like each other and respect each other, even if you don't always agree, people can see that. And they know that's the Toastmaster way. Getting along is what you're trying to get to. So you start your new group and you're trying to get off the ground like that plane or that goose, and you're thrashing about and trying to figure things out. And one of the members in the club I belong to is an extremely organized, very time-conscious person, and I'm kind of not. I know information, but I'm not that. So there's a clash there. And slowly, we're starting to mesh our styles and find that we both have something to offer.
Joanne,
Yeah.
How long should the executive meeting be in length?
How much work do you have to do, and how much preparation did you do? You know, if everybody's really done good preparation before the meeting, it'll be maybe shorter. And if you want to have a social time, first time I was a president, the person who had been the president the year before, really good at being a president, not kind of my best role naturally. I'm really good at VP Ed role naturally. It's my bent, as it were. She did not want to let go of being the president. And now she was the past president at my first executive meeting. She was also sweet on the guy who was the sergeant at arms. And he was a very time-conscious person. He came into the room and did this, folded his arms and went, "How long is this gonna take?" Well, I was intimidated because I was new and I just didn't quite know what to do. So I didn't invite him to the next executive meeting till the night before. And unfortunately, he was busy. Not the best solution. Now I would have suggested he give his report early, or he give his part early in the meeting, would change the agenda to accommodate him. I don't think he would do that now. You know, he's a different person now, but at that time it was very intimidating for me. Yeah, it took a while. Now he hugs me, we're good. But
Joanne,
I think you set a time and hope you can do all your business. And if you need to do business or do decisions with part of the executive and part of the executive and then all get together, that may be a better solution than wasting people's time, or if they're going to take it as wasting people's time by all being together.
any specifics on how to bring in the quiet one and tone down the domineering one?
Yes. You know what? You wait for a little pause and you say, "Mark, I'd really like to hear what you have to say." And if Mr. or Mrs. Noisy keeps talking, you say, "Right now, I'd like to hear what Mark has to say." And if you have to say it again, you say it again. In communication things, it's called broken record, and you're allowed to sound like that for that purpose. Yeah. I still want to hear what Mark has to say. Mark's not finished yet. And you know what'll happen? Somebody else will bump him. You know, people will get on board with you if it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Should your meeting agenda minutes for a club or area or division meeting include the calendar milestones for the meeting or group?
I think all of the executive members should have it, and you know, having the members have it would be, you know, there'll be some people who are interested in that. you know, it's not a particular focus of mine, but it is good to have those calendars and to know what's supposed to be going on. I think I have an internal clock for Toastmasters now, so I don't think about it too much. But especially for new members, that is a really good resource. If you're fairly new on an executive and you read month by month what, you know, coming up, what you're supposed to be doing, you will be successful. When you read your club leadership handbook or your success plan, if you do 75% of what your plan is or what they suggest, you're going to be highly successful. Nobody can do everything. If you can, let me know how you do it. I want help.
Joanne, I have a question here from Sherry. I've never used Robert's rules for a meeting. How and when would you use them?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sherry. I would suggest you don't need it at Toastmasters unless you have a yearning to learn it for some other purpose. It's a lot to study. You could get the In Brief book and read it for ideas on how to handle things, but I would really be looking for you to look for consensus and including people in decisions. I don't think you need it in the meeting too much.
I
Yep.
usually try and operate by consensus in my meetings on the
Yeah.
executive, but is there ever a time, I guess, if you are trying to operate by consensus, that you might feel that you might have to get down to a vote for more serious issues or issues that are more monetary, or can you, if you, once you picked one method of running a meeting, such as consensus, should you stick to that method for your meeting, or is there any times when you kind of need to, you know, get more serious, I guess, or a different level of serious where you need to record votes?
Yeah, even in Robert's Rules of Order, it's without any objection. Can we just go ahead and do this if it's something simple? When it's money, it would be really, you know, it's the quickest way to get it done. And unless people have a discussion about what you're spending your money on, have a vote. You know, once you've presented everything and people stop talking, you could easily vote and then it's done. Or you can say, it seems like there's a consensus. Well, shall we just go ahead and do this? But if you see hands up, you know you've got it. You know you've got the support.
Okay, great, thank you.
And you might also, but if you're asking for a vote, I would ask for a vote for and against. And if there's still somebody against, you might want to know why.
Should club success planning be at the first club executive meeting in July? So first thing that they do, club success planning.
Yes, I think all of the executive members should be started on it before your meeting and then bring what they've come to so far. And then you've got to, I mean, if you're doing all the planning at the meeting, it's going to be very unwieldy and just take way too long. And, you know, there'll be people who are getting really frustrated with that, you know, that way of handling things. So as the president or VP head of the club, just see if you can't get people directed to looking at that and thinking about it and entering things in that plan now before the meeting.
Only time I've used the Robert rules in Toastmasters was in with a conflicting person.
Yes.
And I was the president, I was new. So, and I knew about Robert rules. What I decided was to involve the area and the division before taking any action or making any decision within the club. And the Robert rules were made within the club. I mean, so all members were there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and the person was.
It's just that I've seen things too with Robert's rules. You can still vote, and if it doesn't feel right, then there's something wrong. You know, if you think, well, what? So I was a parliamentarian for a district governor quite a while ago, and something came up that she wasn't quite sure how to handle at that moment. And she turned to me and said, what could I do? Because it's not my decision, it's her decision. And I said, what I would do is this. And she goes, okay, she did something else, but it was really right for the time and the place and the people. You know, she just needed a minute to think about it more than anything. And then I have seen, I visited a club on the island quite a long while ago, and the person who knew quite a bit about parliamentary procedure was holding the club captive to their knowledge. So they thought something had to be a certain way, and I understood why they did. As a visitor, I asked if I could speak, and I said, I can see why you think that way, but actually it's this way. And everybody went, oh, because it made sense, you know, but she just didn't know. And so if you get people who are too sure that they know everything in Roberts without really knowing everything in Robert, they can hold you captive to, you know, what they think is right. So then you got to go and do some studying possibly. Yeah. But yeah, voting does work as long as everybody feels that they were able to contribute to a motion and participate. Oh, so if you're voting and maybe you have 20 members, so more than half of your members need to be there. If it's something with money or time or education or your meeting room, you should let people know ahead that you're deciding that. Don't just do it. But once they're in the room, if you have, and you've got a quorum, which is more than half of the members, and the vote is one person votes yes and nobody votes no, it passes. So, you know, you really want more participation than that, and having a conversation first is better before the vote.
Like this video to tell the presenters what you thought? Hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss anything else. And comment below if there's anything else you'd like to see.